On the Fringe with Dan RadioStyle. Hope everybody out there is having themselves a great day. A lot is going on in the world right now. I've got some great news going on with Trump. Also going to talk a little bit about what's going on with China and some big pushes that are happening from a world standpoint, but also from our standpoint. We've also got a lot of evidence of people starting to truly wake up and seeing the truth of what's going on. The Great Awakening, they call it that for a reason. Also, a little bit of a talk around polls. There's been a lot of talk about polls lately. Two particular major polls have been talked about. I kind of want to show a little bit of info around those so you kind of understand polls and how they work. I'm a numbers guy, and polls are certainly a way that statistics are taken advantage of. I just kind of want to show so everybody's at least understands when people throw out these poll numbers what they actually mean. And we've got a plan to actually harden the mail-in vote process. Got a couple different states right now that are leading the way on that. And we've got some evidence, of course, of mayors taking advantage of all of what's going on right now and kind of showing themselves as dictators. So, good news for Trump. He's talking about an executive order if Congress can't get their stuff together by the end of Friday, August 7th. If they don't have it done by the end of the day and they go on their little recess for the summer, which again is when the deep state likes to play around a little bit when everyone goes home for August. So this is a new time right now, also right before the presidential election. Also, Trump being very aware of what's going on. So some of the things he said, look, if you guys can't get this figured out and we can't all agree, I'm going to go ahead and take care of business. So upon departing the Oval Office for Ohio, I've notified my staff to continue working on an executive order with respect to payroll tax cut, eviction protections, unemployment extensions, and student loan repayment options. Payroll tax cuts. Really excited about this, frankly, because this will make a nice little difference in my paycheck. But they're actually talking about pulling back payroll taxes. Now, there's some concerns because I think they're also talking about Social Security taxes as well, which is like, wow. So I think the only thing that we might get stuck having to pay would be state taxes. At least I know I will in California. But it sounds like they're getting rid of all the federally mandated tax cuts. Why? One, mainly because it's a stimulus to go back to work. Two, because you don't have the companies having to pay the unemployment tax, having to match the FICO, all those things. And so they've got a little extra money now to negotiate with, whether or not they want to hire more people, whether or not they want to maybe hold off furloughing or laying people off a little bit longer. So huge thing. Student loans. Trump's kind of come up with some ways that they can help deal with the student loan problem a little better. I think with interest rates being as low as they are right now, if you've got student loans and you haven't looked into it, definitely consider trying to refi if you can, because that's a great way to get that loan transferred over to something else that you might be able to get away from. We got unemployment benefits. So Trump says he wants to extend the unemployment benefits. The $600 a week unemployment insurance was supposed to end in July. Congress did not agree to extend these supplemental benefits before the expiration. So I guess in 49 states, recipients received their final unemployment check as of July 25th. So that's apparently being extended. I think the Democrats had a lot of ties into this money, and we're trying to get funding for states, and mainly, California, New York, a couple major states that are just crumbling right now because they can't handle or manage their own infrastructure, and they were really hoping to get some of these dollars, and they're not going to. Eviction protection, which is super cool, says he wants to protect Americans from losing their home through eviction as a result of COVID-19. The CARES Act placed a 120-day moratorium on evictions, so certainly helping out. And so he's moving in the right direction. What else is Trump doing, one might ask? Well, we've talked about this number. This is getting thrown around a lot. I don't want to waste a whole lot of time on it, but the unemployment numbers are looking better. 1.76 million jobs were added as opposed to 1.4 million or whatever. Not huge. We're not looking at an amazing recovery right now. Certainly nothing like, I think, June or whatever. But again, we're moving in the right direction. And if we'd actually get states to open up government or states to open up jobs and open up the economy and everything, we'd see enormous V-shaped activity. Makes one wonder if there's more to trying to keep things closed down than just the protection. Again, like the virus is going to be out there no matter what. Like to have everyone just stay locked up inside their homes and hope the virus goes away forever. Like all you're doing is just delaying the inevitable. People are going to get it ultimately if it's as contagious as they say. So we might as well just have people get it, which is funny because a lot of the people that are complaining about who's getting it I don't know where that story is, but a lot of the people that are complaining about who's getting it happens to fall into the younger age range, people that are 18 to 45. Well, if you think about it, from a herd immunity standpoint, that's who you want to get sick. They're not going to die, and they're going to eventually recover, and now they should have antibodies. We don't know for sure, I know, but this is a COVID virus. This is a flu, so flus have antibodies. That's kind of normal, but whatever. We'll wait until the CDC finally tells us that there's antibodies created, whatever. But still, we're moving in the right direction. Another thing that Trump's going crazy on, TikTok, going after TikTok hard and their parent company. And this is sending major ripples through the world. One, Apple, I guess, is kind of getting threatened right now, which frankly I think is a little funny, but whatever. Some in China could ditch Apple if WeChat is banned from the App Store. CNBC is citing a poll. So yeah, China may be putting their foot down and saying, hey, if you guys get rid of this app, we're gonna ban you from China, period. And it's like, all right, well, you have a lot of Apple users, but whatever. And then on top of that, hey, Apple's got to do what they have to do. So we'll see if they try to do something weird, move their headquarters. Who knows what crazy stuff could happen. But that's going to be a little mini war brewing. Microsoft was talking about buying it. It seems like there's a lot of pressures with that happening. Trump also said 45 days until this was actually going to be in effect. And 45 is kind of an interesting deep state number. I don't know if there's a link below, but a pale new horse, or Behold a Pale Horse, sorry, the book I've been reading lately. And it's a fascinating book written back in like 90, 91, whatever. And if you want to see what's going on in the world, that book is pretty awesome. But that being said, 9 is kind of one of those numbers. And so it's interesting that they chose 45. It's a 9 number. So right here, this company, Tencent, I guess, is the parent company. They used to be worth $686 billion. They were the 8th largest company by market capitalization, bigger than Berkshire Hathaway Inc. It's a huge company making a huge footprint on the planet that just had an enormously huge drop. Their stock went down super duper low on the 7th. And one might suggest that maybe someone decided to buy out, or it just suddenly became a really good buy and it looks like it got a small recovery, but still closed quite a bit lower than it opened that day. So again, this stock is tanking pretty hard right now. And this is scaring and affecting a lot in China. So Trump is kind of hitting China kind of in a proper way. Economic, hitting them with the sanctions on all the trade and all the stuff, the goods they send to us. So kind of hurting the money they do, which is then going to help Americans decide to buy stuff that's either more locally made, and I mean maybe North American or the American continent. So somewhere a little more over here, maybe some places like India, but not China. So it seems we're moving in some very strong directions. And again, this is causing a lot of ties to China being broken. Right now, they're talking about this clean network policy. The U.S. is also pushing ahead with this policy that covers clean carrier to ensure no Chinese carriers are connected with U.S. telecom networks. Clean Store to remove entrusted or untrusted applications from U.S. mobile app stores. Clean Apps to prevent untrusted Chinese smartphone manufacturers from pre-installing or otherwise making available for download trusted apps on their app store. They are literally shutting down the ability for us to get stuff from China as far as their apps. There's a lot of cheating that they've got on their apps. There's intentional spying done on their apps. And companies that actually host these apps are then pressured by China to give up personal information about the users that are using those apps. This is being stopped. Pretty significant. Now, a lot of people have talked about this problem that happened in Lebanon, this explosion, this ginormous explosion. I did a little talk about it in my last video. There's all sorts of suspicion around it. But, of course, Trump called it a bomb, and there's a lot of people on the left right now in the mainstream media that are like, Trump called it a bomb, that's ridiculous. It's obviously this fertilizer, this 2,700 pounds of ammonium nitrate or whatever. Well, oddly, the president of Lebanon is also looking into the probe as possibly having external influences. External influences. Huh, you mean like other people being involved in our economies, other people maybe trying to influence what's going on in our world, maybe other countries that might not like what you're doing in Lebanon or Beirut. Now, again, first suspicion for me, frankly, is Israel, but whatever. It looked like a bomb to me. I don't know. I'm not, Mr. Expert on all that stuff. It just kind of had that look and feel to it. And anyway, so we'll see what happens. I doubt we'll ever know for sure, but we'll see what happens. We'll see how that plays out. But speaking of foreign interference, this guy is getting a lot of attention right now and kind of in the wrong ways. And someone else who we're not real fond of right now is also getting some negative attention. And gee whiz, I can't say I'm probably I don't feel bad for her. Let's put it that way. But George Soros apparently is helping pay for Kim Gardner. Who's Kim Gardner, you ask? That St. Louis attorney that is trying to destroy the rights of the McCloskeys. That's that guy that was holding the AR-15, and his wife was holding essentially a gun that was non-functional. She was holding a non-functional gun, and so they were, in trouble. And so all that being said, this Kim lady's going after him hardcore. She's even campaigning on them, which is pretty weird. She's gotten in trouble for trying to rebuild the gun so it would be functional, the one that the wife was holding. It wasn't. And then on top of that, they're trying to throw the book for a legal standoff between this gentleman, his house, and a bunch of people that wanted to do harm to him. He was definitely in harm. Now, the governor's already said, look, whatever happens, this family's going to be off. I'll pardon them. No big deal. Trump said the same thing. Like, no matter what, these guys are fine. But what is coming out that's kind of interesting is this isn't the first time that corrupt Kim Gardner was used as a political weapon against good Americans. It's not. She's filed criminal charges against former Republican Missouri Governor Eric Greitens. Under pressure, the governor was forced to resign, but it was later revealed that Gardner had no evidence to substantiate her case. Gardner is also under investigation for the swindle. Her former chief investigator is also under investigation for evidence tampering charges. Gardner ordered a crime lab to tamper with the weapon used by Patricia McCloskey so she could convince a jury that the McCloskeys intended to use their weapons for lethal use. Now, this story is actually pretty cool. They talk about the weapon. Now, they can't say a lot because of what's going on in the court. In response, she began by noting she wasn't sure how much she could actually say about the weapon, probably on the advice of the couple's attorney. But then Mark jumps in and says, and that's the husband, he says, I'll say it this way. It was, in fact, once a real gun, but it was not operational at the time. So Kim is getting in trouble for trying to re-put this gun back together and make it operational. That's pretty bad. Tampering with evidence, trying to actually frame somebody. That's all sorts of wrong. So she's not going to be able to convince a jury. Missouri Governor Michael Parsons said he's going to pardon the McCloskeys, no big deal. The husband and wife duo also have the support of Missouri Attorney General Eric Schmidt, Missouri GOP Senator Josh Hawley, and President Trump. So, again, nothing's going to happen, but a lot of intention, a lot of evidence, a lot of stuff. People are seeing what's going on, and this Kim Gardner is going to be big time in the spotlight. Now, another thing that's very interesting is all these cities that are talking about defunding, and we're about to get into the polls and all the craziness around polls, and just to kind of help us understand them. But trucking companies are actually saying if there are cities that have the defund police, meaning no police anymore, trucking companies are no longer going to go into those cities. And so all these people that are like, yay, kick the cops out, even though it's a tiny percentage of people, yay, kick the cops out. You understand you're not going to be able to feed yourself anymore, right? You understand you won't be able to get gas for your car anymore. You understand you won't be able to get varnish for the baseball bat you carry around. I don't know. You're not going to be able to do anything anymore. So you're destroying your own cities, or at least you're destroying these cities that you're going into and causing all these problems. And for all of you that are supporting this behavior, you're destroying your own cities. It's time for people to stand up. And again, people are starting to realize what's going on. So this poll was uncomplicated. It was talking about two basic, easy questions, two non-leading questions, as they say. Is the mob violence that has continued for weeks in several major cities primarily legitimate outrage over the police, or mostly criminals taking advantage of the situation? So that was question one. And question two, is the mob violence likely to improve the criminal justice situation in America or make it worse? Very simple questions, and really, if you think about it, pretty simple answers. Now, one thing I want to point out, this is 1,000 people only. 1,000 likely voters were conducted by phone over this short period of time. So whatever, it's 1,000 people, and we're just deciding this poll represents what everyone thinks. So right off the bat, understand these polls they try to do a balanced approach. But ultimately, they make phone calls, and if someone answers the phone and starts answering questions, then there you go. I don't think it gets much more crazy than that. And they're hoping that the households they're calling are a nice mixture, or certain number of Hispanics, certain number of African Americans, certain number of Asians, certain number of white, whatever, right? Try to get that balance. So of all those polled, the current mob violence is aimed at alleged race-driven police brutality, but only 21% of voters actually think that it's likely to improve the criminal justice situation in America. 51% believe the mob violence will make the criminal justice system worse, and 17% think it'll have no impact. And 12% are undecided. I don't even know what that means, right? Like, okay, you can't even make up your mind. So those under 40 are more likely than their elders to view the ongoing mob violence in several cities as chiefly legitimate outrage. But even among young voters, a plurality, 49%, think it's primarily criminal instead. 56% of whites, 70% of minority voters, and 37% of blacks agree that this is just criminal activity. 41% of black voters say it's mostly legitimate outrage. Again, it's not even a majority. So checking into this poll, and this is where things start to get, I think, a lot more interesting and diced up a little bit differently. Now, in this particular poll, and I can go to the bottom and show you here in a bit, I think it was like 36,000 plus people were part of this particular survey. This one's getting a lot of voice right now amongst everybody. So preference for the amount of time police spend in your area was a key question in here. Now, a couple things were asked. A lot of it had to do with how much time police spend in your area, and then it's the quality of that time that they're spending with you. And ultimately, the end of this poll kind of shows us that quality seems to be favored over quantity. But right here, Black Americans, 20% want more time, 61% want about the same amount of time that police are spending in their area, 19% want less time. So this column is kind of the funny one. Of all the people that are complaining about how horrible life is, the 14% that say, hey, let's get rid of cops, or we want them to spend less time in our cities, or none at all, a very small percentage falls into the categories you would think. So Black Americans is less than 20%, white Americans less than 12%, Hispanics less than 17 or 17, whatever, and Asians, oddly, don't like cops at all. Which is funny, we're going to see that actually kind of shared a bunch in here. It seems like the African American community and the Asian community definitely do not like cops. So how often do you see police in your neighborhood? Now, again, broken down very often, sometimes, rarely, never. So we're just trying to get a feeling for where they're at. This is their benchmark, right? And as you can see, 70+%, I mean, a good chunk of people, very often to sometimes. Pretty much, right? And then the third, rarely, it's about a third of everybody, but most everybody else, 2/3 of everybody else falls into the very often, and then sometimes. And that's going to come into play here nicely. Black Americans' preference for time police spend in their neighborhoods. So more time, same amount of time, less time. So of the people, this is how statistics work, that very often, that basically answered up here, of those people, 10% of them want more time, 56% of them want about the same time, and 34% want less time. Again, the way they slice these numbers is pretty crazy. We got down here confidence about receiving positive treatment by police, and this is where it starts to get interesting. Very confident, somewhat confident, not too confident, not at all. Long story short, bottom line, it's not so much the volume of interactions Black Americans have with the police that troubles them or differentiates them from other racial groups, but rather the quality of those interactions. Most Black Americans want the police to spend at least as much time in their area as they currently do, indicating that they value the need for service that police provide. However, that exposure comes with more trepidation for Black than white or Hispanic Americans about what they might experience in a police encounter. And those harboring the least confidence that they will be treated well or who have had negative encounters in the past are much more likely to want the police presence curtailed. Not removed, curtailed. So this is this infamous Gallup poll that everyone keeps talking about. And again, I told you I'd say it. 36,463 people aged 18 and older fielded the June 23rd to July 6th. It was done in English only, by the way, so all these people had to at least be fluent in English. It was not done in multiple languages, which is significant, I think. And blah-de-blah with the rate and error and yada yada. So ultimately, of all the people, and this is going to make sense in a moment, of all the people that really got checked into this, about 2/3 of everybody are like, yeah, no, I like the cops where they're at, maybe a little bit more. And I just, I'd like to see the quality of the experiences we have improved, but I do not want to see it defunded. Now, on this particular side of the Gallup poll, there's some very interesting questions that were brought up. Here's sort of the broad ideas of them. I don't want to dig into them too horribly deeply, but requiring officers to have good relationships with the community, changing management practices so officer abuses are punished, changing management practices so officers with multiple incidents of abuse cannot be able to serve again, promoting community-based alternatives such as violence intervention. Awesome. Abolishing police departments was literally a question in there, and the results are kind of cool. And then we've got some ending the stop and frisk, eliminating police unions, which this one really struck me as interesting because I guess the police union right now is considered on the right, but unions in general are very heavy left. And the second you start eliminating unions, well, you've got the teachers union, you've got the prisons union, you've got the grocers union, you've got the Teamsters, you've got all these unions that have a lot of power and a lot of sway and certainly donate a lot of money to the Democrats that are going to be on the chopping block because you made it possible by getting rid of this union. And so this is an interesting path that people are looking at going down. Eliminating officer enforcement of nonviolent crimes, reducing police department funding, and shifting the money into social programs. So these are basically the areas that a lot of these questions come into play. Now, of the 36,000 people, this only speaks for the people that strongly support or somewhat support these ideas. Anyone that slightly supported or didn't support, they're not in these numbers that we're looking at. This is where polls get interesting. They took essentially of the people that said strongly support or somewhat support, they said, okay, now of all these people, we're going to break and down and slice and dice all their different numbers. Now, the two that really jumped out at me that I thought, we can look at all these. Changing management, right? Like across the board. Everybody wants to get rid of that. You get all Americans, black, Asian, Hispanic, white, right? So everyone across the board is like, yeah, no, let's change management practices, requiring officers to have good relationships with the community. Everybody's in agreement on that. Changing management practices so officer abuses are punished. Everybody's pretty solid across the board on that. Promoting community-based alternatives such as violence intervention. Again, really high marks. Everybody's kind of on board. This is one of those unanimously, everybody's good. And stop and frisk, high numbers, but whatever. I get the two higher communities, Asian and black, definitely don't like it. Everyone else is kind of in the 70s. They're like, yeah. Eliminating police unions, though, this one's about 50%. That really blows my mind. Now, that's very partisan lines, most likely, but very dangerous for the Democrats to even consider going down this. And that's one of the things that they don't realize. They set up all these stupid rules, and then when they come back and bite them in the butt, they're like, wait, that's not fair. I'm on your side. Why are you looting my building? Well, because you're an idiot. That's why. So, again, same thing happening there. Eliminating officer enforcement of nonviolent crimes. Okay, pretty low numbers there. Okay, but nonviolent crimes, I don't really know too much, and we're not going to get into it. Reducing the budget of police departments and shifting the money to social programs. Now, again, I want the same Gallup poll over here talking about, do you want them to spend more time, less time, or the same? And about 2/3 of everybody wanted the same amount of time that cops spend there or more. But oddly, the way they sliced and diced these numbers, same poll, same population polled, exact same people, and I'll show you at the bottom, it's the exact same people. Of those, reducing the budget of police departments and shifting money to social programs. Now, overall, 47% of Americans agree with that. So, again, less than 50% are even all about doing that. But the way it breaks down, again, is kind of how you'd expect. Black and Asians really, really dislike cops. And everyone else is like, yeah, whatever. Like, it's cool. There's probably some other stuff we could maybe spend money on. And then there's a large chunk of people that did not strongly support or somewhat support this crazy idea that are like, hell no, give more money to cops. None of those people show up in this poll. So again, these numbers are very weird. They're weighted funny. And most importantly, abolishing police departments. 15%, that's it. Of the people who strongly support or somewhat support, 15% of them only are about getting rid of stuff. And again, 22%, 27%. So they've got this broken down into a few different ways. You can look at it from Republican, Democrat, Independents. Again, these bottom two are funny to me. Reducing the budget, so Republicans are totally against it. Democrats are very against reducing the budgets, figures they want the money themselves. But they're not about shutting down the police departments. Democrats actually don't, no one's really voting that one that high. Now, obviously, the Democrats are way more. I think it was 14% of everybody. And again, look at the numbers. Now, my listening audience is basically 35 to 65. So 18 to 34, you guys really aren't paying any attention to me, and I can see why. You guys don't like anything that I'm about, and most of us don't understand you, because 33% of the crazy people in this part of the survey are all about abolishing the police department. Here's your group. Here's your target group that's causing this. You got a little bit in the people that are slightly older, but that's it, man. Once you hit about 36, 37, you actually get a real job or finally move out of mom's house, you start changing the way you view the world. And again, like I told you, 36,463. This is the same survey, June 23rd to July 6th. It's the exact same Gallup survey. Okay, so how is it over here? These people, 2/3 of them are okay with, again, that's what I'm saying about polls. Of all those people, just the ones that felt a certain way. And then I'm going to take those numbers and slice and dice, and then I'm going to tell you everything that's happening in the world based off that. Understand that polls are statistics. That's all they are. It's people chopping numbers up in goofy ways and making them look however they want. I work with numbers for a living. That's what I'm good at. I love it, and they're easy to manipulate. That's what's going on. Now, FYI, just saying, BlasianLivesMatter.com does not exist. I think it's a good idea because if you think about it, you've got two segments of the population that pretty much don't like police officers. I'm just throwing it out. Any of you that are interested in trying to come up with a good idea, I'd recommend it. Anywho, so mail-in ballots, getting this resolved for us. Well, the states are starting to weigh in. We've got two of them in particular. Rhode Island, they finally said we're going to mobilize the National Guard to help process the expected overwhelming numbers of mail-in ballots. That's going to actually make things a lot more secure, isn't it? It's going to make things have a centralized location for things to flow through from, for things to be documented, counted, and every number of things. Now, supposedly the National Guard's not going to actually open the internal envelope. It's all going to be the external, checking signatures, checking information, and then passing it along. But that would give an initial count, and that will help secure the mail-in ballots. Who else is maybe doing that? Kentucky. Kentucky's doing it too. Yeah. So they're also having the same concerns about mail-in absentee ballots or mail-in balloting in general, the large number of people that are going to be doing this. And also there's some talks of actually having, in this particular case in Kentucky, they're actually going to go to the pains of having some in-person places that you can actually go to. So they've had some problems finding people that feel safe to do that. But again, National Guard to help with the voting process. This is going to be the trend. It's starting in these states, and it's probably going to be something that is shown to be a way to resolve this problem. And I'm willing to bet a few states are going to be like, no, we got this, and they're going to be a joke. And it's going to be obvious what's actually happening, that we've got a couple states, New York and California for sure, that think that they should be able to run this country, and guess what? You can't. You're 2 of 50 states, and there's still 48 other states that you may not respect or care about, but they have a say as well. Just as much of a say as you. So, again, not cool how that's playing out. Now, one thing that's really kind of getting me a little irked, but it's meant to frustrate everybody because this is what we need. Again, people have to see this. People have to experience this. We've got dictators in our midst, it seems. We've got mayors and we've got governors that are really pushing their abilities. Mayor Garcetti here in Los Angeles is authorizing power and water shutoffs at houses and businesses hosting large parties. Now, just to give you a small taste of what this large party is, and I mean, there's some money at this party. They show us a little bit of it. Yeah, there's some big money, but this isn't anyone's house, supposedly. So what they're going to do is shut off stuff because people are renting these houses for like a day at a time. And this will be, like, this is one of the beautiful hills, Hollywood Hills homes or whatever. But anyway, this is what they're talking about, is this particular video. So you got Eric Garcetti that's wanting to put a stop to all this. I'm going to stop this because at some point they're actually shooting begins, and that's not cool. But again, very nice house with a lot going on there. And yeah, Garcetti's basically saying, look, here's what's going to start happening as of tonight, the night I'm filming this or the day I'm filming this. As of tonight, if they see houses hosting these parties, they literally are going to have the Department of Water and Power come out there and shut off the electricity and the water to the house. For people that may be COVID infected and you might need to wash your hands, going to shut it off. But that's how they're going to get even with us. Now, New York doing the same thing, not to try to be outdone by Eric Garcetti here in LA, but you've also got New York, and Mr. de Blasio is doing the same thing. He's doing his crackdown. And so he's actually going to be stopping every car, and they're going to be coming, all the places where you can come into the city, they're going to literally have checkpoints. Traveler registration checkpoints would be set up at bridges and tunnels, conjuring images of police officers stopping cars and detaining people from out of state. This is literally where we are at, folks. But the thing is people are seeing it. People are getting very antsy about it. People are, in fact, getting angry about it. And people are starting to put their foot down. And we're starting to see that happen. And on top of that, we're seeing which leaders and where are really starting to take advantage of things and really starting to try to lock people down. And speaking of taking advantage of things, the deep state has given the presidential candidate, a presidential position, so much executive order power because of what they were hoping to be able to continue doing post-Obama, that Trump's now got his finger on that same button and is taking advantage of using it to help us out instead of helping out the deep state cronies. A lot is happening. Again, sitting back and watching the show, plus we've got hearings going on. All of this stuff is coming to fruition, and Durham is going to be dropping some huge bombs coming up in the next week or two. All of this is happening before the election. All of this is going to ramp up. And in all honesty, what wouldn't surprise me is if enough stuff ends up coming out that Joe Biden ends up having to drop out. People keep talking about someone else being the Democratic presidential candidate, which I'm sure is going to be the case because Biden's so weak anyway. Odds are he's going to get in such hot water, he's going to have to drop out because of that. And that's when they're probably going to scramble to push people in place. I think that's how that's going to play out. And again, all this stuff is close. The Democratic National Convention is supposed to pick their person this month. So we've got that rally or whatever they're doing. It's going to be virtual. I don't know. It's going to be silly. We'll see what happens. Remember this, where we go one, we go all, and there's nothing new on the Q front right now still. So we're going to continue keeping tabs on that. But again, here's what's going on in the world, folks. And it's, I think, looking up. I've actually got a lot of hope. And I'm hoping you're starting to as well. It's on the Fringe with Dan RadioStyle.